All right, I've got another agenda for another city council meeting. This week, should Essex Junction set its municipal tax rate before every property assessment is finalized? Should voters approve a roughly $2 million bond to replace a critical wastewater force main? And what changes could be coming to the city's zoning rules? Those are some of the biggest questions before the Essex Junction City Council this week. We're going to break it down, what those decisions mean, explain why they matter, and of course, help you understand what's coming up before the council votes. Hi everybody, I'm Marcus Serta, former Essex Junction City Councilor, and welcome to the Essex Junction Packet Podcast. This show isn't produced by or affiliated with the City of Essex Junction or the City Council. My goal is simply to help make local government a little easier to understand by breaking down the council packet before each meeting. So let's get into this week's agenda. But before we look ahead, here's a quick recap of what happened at the last City Council meeting. The council agreed to continue moving the West Street Force Main project forward, keeping on track for a proposed bond vote this November. We'll talk more details later. The council also scheduled a backup meeting for August 3rd in case additional time was needed to set this year's municipal tax rate. If the tax rate is approved at this week's meeting, which will be discussed, that meeting is going to be canceled. The council has also tabled the purchase of a new fire department command vehicle, choosing to gather additional information before making a final decision. This is an impact of a number of projects that are just needing money at this time. And finally, after meeting in executive session, the city attorneys discussed pending litigation with the council, and the council returned to open session and unanimously approved a settlement agreement. Because the discussion involved confidential attorney-client communications, the details of that discussion and the terms of the settlement were not discussed publicly. Now, let's look into what's coming up this week. Discussion this week is one that affects every property owner in Essex Junction. The council is being asked to set the city's FY27 municipal tax rate. Now, normally this is a fairly routine vote, but this year is a bit different because Essex Junction recently completed citywide reappraisal. The grievance process is still underway and some property assessments may continue to change. Even so, the city wants to keep property tax bills on their normal schedule. But to do that, the council is being asked to establish the municipal tax rate using the preliminary grand list. If approved, the city would also cancel the backup tax rate meeting I talked about earlier that's scheduled for August 3rd. Now, it's important to remember that this vote establishes the city's municipal tax rate. The education tax rate is determined separately by the state of Vermont and, of course, the school board. Now, you might be wondering why the city set the tax rate or why they would want to set the tax rate before every assessment is finalized. Now, under Vermont law, municipalities have several options when a reappraisal is delayed to get to those final values. They can delay sending tax bills, or they can issue bills using an interim tax rate and reconcile them later, or establish the municipal tax rate using the preliminary grand list while continuing to process grievances. Now, this week, the council is considering that third option. Now, I want to hear what you think about this. Would you keep the tax bills on schedule or move the due date until the appraisal process is complete? Leave your thoughts in the comments below because I look forward to reading them and finding out what you think about this particular issue. It's a big one and it's going to impact what we see for our August bills. Up next, the second major item is one that most residents will never see because it's underground, but everyone is going to depend on. The council is considering next steps toward replacing the West Street sanitary sewer force main. A force main is a pressurized sewer pipe that moves wastewater from one location to another when gravity alone, of course, can't do that job. The existing infrastructure is too small for the current and future capacity needs, and the city staff says replacing it now will help avoid more costly failures in the future. This week, the council will consider several actions that would move the project toward a bond vote this November. If voters ultimately approve the bond, the city would borrow approximately $2 million to complete the project. Now, the town of Essex will be responsible for a portion of that bill, but the city must get the value to cover that full amount. And according to the packet, the average sanitation customer would see an estimated increase of about $25 a year to help pay for those improvements. Now, while the council can decide whether to place the question on the ballot, the final decision would belong to the Essex Junction voters this November. Next up is an update on the city's engagement and comprehensive plan. Now, this isn't about changing the plan itself, but at least not yet. Instead, the council is going to review how the city plans to involve residents throughout the planning process. The presentation outlines future public meetings, outreach efforts, and opportunities for residents to help shape Essex Junction's long-term vision. If you've ever wanted more input in how the city develops over the next decade or so, look, this is going to be one of the best opportunities to get involved early in the process. Next, the council is also going to begin discussing proposed amendments to the Essex Junction Land Development Code using form-based code. Now, if you've never heard of form-based code, think of it this way. Traditional zoning mostly regulates the way that a property can be built on that property. Form-based code spends more time regulating how the building fits into the neighborhood. For example, the proposal would require taller buildings to step back from the street as they get taller, instead of creating one tall wall along the sidewalk. The upper floors would also be set back, making the building feel a little less imposing for people walking below. The proposal also creates clear standards for things like where parking is located, how buildings relate to the sidewalk, landscaping, and overall site design, making expectations a little more predictable for both developers and the community. Now, this meeting is simply an introduction to those proposed changes. Additional public discussion is expected before any final decision is made. The council is also going to review the completed Pearl Street pedestrian crossing study. The report looks at ways to improve pedestrian safety while balancing traffic flow along one of Essex Junction's busiest corridors, Pearl Street. This is what's known as a scoping study, and a scoping study doesn't decide whether a project actually gets built. Instead, it evaluates possible solutions, identifies potential costs and impacts, and of course helps the city determine what options make the most sense before moving on to detailed engineering and of course construction. Rather than making immediate changes, the study gives council information it can use then to consider future improvements. If you've been following previous discussions about Pearl Street, this report represents the latest step in that ongoing conversation. This week, the council will also get a preview or a briefing from the Public Works Department head. Rick Jones is that department head, and he's a funny guy, and I look forward to seeing him again and, of course, hearing what he has to say, because, look, these updates offer a behind-the-scenes look at what the department is doing, and they're so important to our community because Public Works is responsible for maintaining many of the city roads, water and wastewater infrastructure, and of course, capital projects here in the city. Now, given this meeting's focus on West Street Force Main and that project, this briefing provides additional context about the work being done to maintain and improve the city's infrastructure. Moving on to the consent agenda, here's just a few highlights for this week. There is going to be an approval for several annual liquor and tobacco licenses for local businesses, an amendment to the wastewater capital plan related to equipment replacement. There's going to be an approval for July 8th, the city council meeting minutes, and of course, these are expected to be approved together unless a councilor wants to remove one from the consent agenda. In the reading file this week, it includes several informational updates for the council and, of course, residents. It's a great way to know what's happening day to day, including the city's June financial report, Planning Commission meeting minutes, including continued work on the comprehensive plan and the land development code updates that we talked about earlier. Information about the upcoming Coming Together Substance Use Addiction Summit is also in there, as well as recent Board of Civil Authority and Board of Abatement meeting minutes. The latest city check warrant is in there as well, showing approved expenditures. It was suggested to me long ago that one of the ways you can look at see how the city is spending money is to take a quick look at this, and you might look at some of those largest checks to see where they're going. These items typically aren't discussed, of course, during the meeting, but they are available for everyone who wants to dig deeper into those city operations. Look, that wraps it up. That's this week's Essex Junction Packet Podcast. And if you found this breakdown helpful, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Look, I'm just trying to reach out to as many Essex Junction residents as possible so they can better understand what's happening in our city day after day by the administration that we've asked to do the work to keep this city moving forward. And I look forward to hearing from you in the comments below about your thoughts on the earlier issue. Would you keep tax bills on the schedule or move the due date until the appraisal process is complete? Leave your thoughts in those comments below. I'm going to be reading through them, and of course, I'm looking forward to hearing what you think. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you before the next meeting.